Oh, yeah.
Those are
As I
fine.
walked out, I said, don't even ask me, I have no idea.
That's like, we're gonna eat and leave, well, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. We're just, we're done. Yeah. Either. Which is kind of amazing.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Oh.
Did you call?
So that it's not exactly simple.
Okay, while we are all here.
I don't want to do anything illegal. I don't want to break the rules.
Let's wake up. Let's just feel how to do it. I'm sure it's still, I don't want to. You're big camera. I took the last of it. Yeah, are you recording?
No, 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 no.
Just makes it easier.
Yeah, I just like.
There's nothing defensible about
I mean, if you're going to explain it, definitely don't do it on.
it.
No.
It's like, it's a promise I made to Jen
I was
a few
there-
months ago.
I feel like this was an ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it wasn't.
Like my street.
The follow up from the 4-night town meeting.
This is a.
Oh, yeah.
But
I feel like it opens the door
Mhm.
for further shenanigans. Like I have a unicorn onesie.
Five. All right, it's 7 p.m. and I call the meeting of the Library Board of Trustees to order. I have to introduce myself. I'm Shelby Hill, chairperson, and I would like to read this note. This meeting will be held in person at this location provided on a notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote audience participation, attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law.
Even though we listed it as hybrid, there is nobody. Zoom. Thank you for coming, and this was technically our month off. But I thought it was important for you to see this presentation, also for me to practice, because everything that I'm gonna say, I have to condense down into 5 minutes. Say. So this is gonna be 2 budgets, basically. We've been asked to give 2 different fiscal 27 projections for this financial summit, which is on August 26th. It'll be here at 6 o'clock. One is for a level service budget, which means nothing is really cut. Nothing is really added. And then there's a level funded budget, which is a whole different thing. And we're going to talk about both and what either one of them means. So I want to frame this discussion. It's very early in the budget cycle. They're not making decisions at the financial summit. This is just about hypothetical situations. There was a lot of discussion at the last town meeting about cuts to the town budget. That was a very lengthy discussion. That kind of, I think, there were a lot of questions about what the town department's budgets actually entail and what's in them, and so they want to get ahead of it this year. So we were gonna have this discussion at one point or another. We're having it as early as possible so that the information is out there so that everybody knows. So the other thing that you need to know is that the numbers in this budget, as I repeatedly say, and is on every slide, the draft. I do not have all of my numbers that I need to have. And I will very much explain to you which numbers are hypothetical or yes,
Oh,
yes,
will you be able to send this to me?
yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
I will. I also made 9 copies of my notes by accident, so if you'd like those, you can take them.
Are you-
Am I cat? Yes.
Nine?
So tonight, the discussion isn't necessarily about which budget is preferable. I think that's clear which one we would rather have. But have I missed anything? Have I made assumptions that you disagree with? Is there anything that you would refuse to consider as an option? Absolutely take it off the table. Is there something that I should be considering that I didn't? Is there anything that I've missed? Et cetera, right? Just, I really want to make the presentation at the financial summit as good as I can make it, in a condensed 5-minute version. I also have the opportunity to put a lot of this in handouts. I don't want to overwhelm with information because they'll be getting a lot of it. They'll hear from every town department, so I don't want them to have too much paper and not read ours. But if there's something that you think is very important that I'm not showing you tonight, please let me know. Okay, this one's not so bad. I started with a little service budget because you need to understand what our current services are before we go into what has to be the other one. So with this one, no programs are added, but nothing is cut. It accounts for inflation, it accounts for salary increases. For fiscal 27, the draft request is $1,133,800 as of today. Okay, but the best numbers that I have today. That's a 5%-ish increase over our current budget. I'm hoping to refine that down. It's just the best I can do right now. I'm hoping not to refine it up, but we'll see. I usually don't give you the line by line breakdown at trustees meetings, but you're getting it now because it's really important to tie all of those line items to the specific services that they cover and pay for. So there's a column here for the fiscal 26, the draft 27, and then the percentage change. The salaries, the main issue here, or the main change here is increases. So there's a COLA raise, and then there's a merit raise. So it's 2%, and then again 2%. Not 4%, not quite. And then there's a longevity increase. So there's one person that's stepping into longevity pay, so there's a small increase there. So right off the bat, that's $32,727 total. That number was calculated by the finance department, not by me. So that's important because they have the formulas, they get very complicated. So that number I'm very confident in because somebody with more math skills has done it. The next one is the utilities. Oh, no, 20%. There's nothing I can do about that. That's our electricity and that's our gas. The main issue we're dealing with here is an increased supply charge from utility providers. I talked to Sean, our facilities manager. He says it's hard to know what the numbers are going to be. But we decided that the best place to start would be to budget what we spent last year, which is 90. So, it might be higher than that, the actuals when we spend it, but this is the best number that we have right now. So we'll have other conversations if we need to refine that further, we will. But for right now, this is typically what we do if we look at what we spent in the previous fiscal year, we decide is that going to be about accurate for the next budget? And that's usually what we end up with. So that's a 20% increase, and that's another $15,000 that I really cannot control. Equipment maintenance. If you follow along with this sheet here, it's better. Because I purposely, like after this one, I don't go in order of the budget sheet. Because I have an order that makes more logical sense, I think, for everybody else. And it gets down into here. There's 3 different supply lines, and I put them together out of order because it makes more sense to talk about them together. So equipment maintenance. That is our global, yes,
Come back to utilities.
yes,
The town has gone to the, program with grid where you're going through the roughly 14 cents per kilowatt hour, across the board for the entire year, for 2 years. And I assume the library falls under it.
it's my understanding that the municipal buildings are already on
Yeah.
something similar.
So that program that the town is now in is for residences and businesses. The town many years ago signed long-term contracts, which they renew every couple of years for the municipal buildings, which is a similar concept. I don't remember what the rates are, but it could be.
So the equipment maintenance line, that's our mobile printing for patrons upstairs. That allows them to send something from their smartphone or their mobile device. That is the print station software license. That allows people to send something from our devices to the printer. That is all of our operational software for the patron computers. So we have 12 public computers and we have 3 laptops. That is also the security software. So we have there's a lot of different software that goes into that. That software protects us from viruses, copyright infringement, from illegal downloads, security breaches, and it keeps us in compliance with our minimum requirements in order to be on our internet network, because that network line belongs to CW Mars, which is a breaking portion. They have minimum standards that they require so that they're not vulnerable. Because there's so much data. So we need minimum amount of software to keep that going. And then there is IT support for all of the computers that fall outside of the town line. So there's 3 computers that are on the town network, and then everything else is on the CW Mars network. So we have our own IT. And if you notice, that line went in 16%. Excited to talk about this. Knowing that I would need to control costs, we started looking at alternatives for our IT support, and we were able to sign a new contract with CW Martins. They offer PC desktop support at a fixed cost. It's actually less expensive than we were paying for our consultant, whose hourly rate was sort of it's unpredictable because we don't know how long it's going to take him to do certain things or to fix certain things. With CW Mars, they can do everything remotely. They took everything off of our server. We don't have to worry about replacing our server. It has the same level of security as it did before, fixed costs, and less expensive. So this is a great move for us. And it also takes a lot of the work off of Caitlin and I, because even with our IT person that we were contracting with or consulting with, we had to do a lot of the work ourselves, partly to control costs and partly just because he did not do everything. They do about everything, 85% of the work. We just have to install things like Microsoft.
If something needs to be done in person, do they have a person that can come? Okay.
Yes, they offer, and again, they're in Worcester. So they're very close and they offer, their help desk support is 6 days a week. So every day but Sunday, they have hours. If they need to come out, if it's critical, they'll send somebody out usually that day. But it's usually a quick turnaround. They can do almost everything. Benefit in the speed at which things will get fixed. It's a benefit to the cost. It's also a known cost, so I can budget it and know exactly. But it's gonna cost this much this year, not gonna cost more than that. So that's really great. So we were able to reduce our cost a little bit there. The next 3 lines, so we often get a question of like, why do you have 3 different supply lines? They do very different things. So I put them together so I could explain the difference. Our office supplies covers our Canon printers. We have 3 multi-function units, so they scan, copy, and print in black and white and color. One is for the public upstairs. There's one in the reference office for the upstairs staff. There's one in the staff workroom, and then there's a small just printer that we lease that's downstairs in the workroom connected to the circulation computers. That also covers, so there's the lease, the toner, the printing costs themselves, the paper. So that alone is about half the cost of the line item. It's in bold because we had a 3-year contract with Canon. It's up this year. So I didn't have a better number to plug in for that leasing cost. So I'm using what we're currently paying. I highly doubt it's gonna cost the same amount for that, but I don't. So that's an estimate. That being said, sometimes printing costs, like our printing costs from our last contract to this one went down. Cost of the equipment went up. So it just sort of depends. I can look at other companies as well. So we're going to put out a request for quotes and we're going to look at different companies to see what comes back. If we need to, we can reduce the number of machines that we have. Especially the one that's in the workroom. We might be. The biggest issue and why we have 2 is that one of the machines, the bigger one, is on its own network, so that Kate and I can print. And then the other one is on the other network, so that circulation can print. So if we need to, we can figure something else out, but. So that's another number that has to be refined for.
Is it conceivable, someone's gonna ask this, is it conceivable for the 2 upstairs to be reduced to 1 and staff to print to the public printer? I'm not saying it would be a good idea.
So our staff computers are on a separate network. Yeah. So I don't think so.
Okay.
They could potentially use the mobile printing software. So possibly. The other option too is, sending it to paper. Sending it. It's not like you can't work around it. It's,
What is the, I apologize for getting into the weeds.
Yeah.
We get somebody gets some revenue for the printing that the public does on the public printer. One, how much is that relative to the cost? And 2, what happens to that revenue? Does that come to the library or does it go to the town's general fund?
I will have to follow up on
Okay.
that. My understanding is it offsets the cost.
Okay.
And it's not a whole lot of money.
Right.
But to get an exact figure, that's.
Yeah, I'll type it, it's fine. It's like, I have a notes app, I got it.
I get it. The other major expense in the office supply line is our Pitney Bowes lease, which is our postage meter. That allows us to participate in the ILL program. So if we can't get something within the state of Massachusetts, we can look outside of the state. You send things, or we receive things that then have to be mailed back. It's usually that's there. It also allows us, it's postage, envelopes, bills. So when things don't get returned, we do send paper bills, and our emails are not returned. Also, there's a very small amount of the rest of this that's for pens, post-it notes, things like that. It's not a lot of money. And it goes for a lot of different things. Our custodial supplies, our trash bags, toilet paper, and paper towels. That's it. Everything else is contracted through the cleaning company. That's it. There's no way to cut that. That is what it is. Those two line items, we use a company that is on the Massachusetts Higher Education Consortium contract list, which means that we are guaranteed the best pricing. So there's no way to negotiate the prices down. They're already below as they can go. So we're getting the best price.
Question again, and thinking the questions that might come up later. It might be worthwhile to compare the prices that we get for those things to prices for the that the senior center gets and things like. They might buy off essentially the same bid list, or there might be sometimes I've seen those lists not be as competitive as you can do if you're collaborating. You're not talking about a lot of money here, $200. And the time to really look into it, but it's probably at least worth asking the senior center, hey, how much it takes for oxygen.
Right, and what would you say if we bought
Right.
together?
Right.
All right. Our basic line that just says supplies, that's our library processing supplies. So again, we use an MHEC contract, best pricing, lowest pricing. There's only a few that sell library processing supplies, so they charge, but they're all about the same. That's labels, stickers, so that we have call numbers on the books, we have barcodes, Mylar protected book covers, book repair materials, so that's spine tape, glue, CD cleaner, locking theft prevention cases for the media, packaging materials needed for hotspots, kids, library things, items, like the pouches, the hotspots circulate in, the backpack, it's circulate in. It's a general price increase. Most of the price increase is honestly the locking cases. They're getting more expensive because they're getting harder to find. So there's a couple of companies that just don't sell them anymore, which means less competition for the other ones. So the price goes up. But the cost in this line item enable us to keep materials in good condition longer. We can circulate things longer. We have a really cool Cover One repair machine, which lets us review books. So things that we used to have to throw away, we can repair now. And they last a whole lot longer than if we just used book glue circulations. We're preventing losses from theft because the case is locked, so the games aren't getting stolen or the CDs, things like that. We're not circulating things in the CD jewel cases that break as soon as you look at them. They last a lot longer. Library cards are also included here, but we don't buy them every year. We buy them in bulk so that we get a better price. We go in with the rest of the network in a bulk that we do get that collected thing. 2 to 3 years we need to buy. And spine labels are fairly important in being able to find and track things. And then new equipment, that's computers. Generally, keyboards, mice. Contractual services you see is in bold again. Put that out of order because I have a lot more to say about it. So that includes our web hosting, our self-checkout, our elevator emergency telephone, and the licenses for our museum pass booking, event calendar and registration license, library things booking license, the museum and study room, meeting and study room. And the museum pass. Summer reading registration and tracking, weekly new materials newsletter, and we have a widget on the website. If you've ever seen it, it's that new books right on the homepage, runs to the bottom, that shows you what's just in. And then half of our CW Mars network membership. The other half is paid out of state. Will not have the actual number for the CW Mars assessment until November. That's contractual, that's standard. Usually they have a draft out a little sooner than that, but they don't vote on it until the user council meeting.
It's the assumption that the state aid will remain stable.
That's the assumption. That also depends on staying certified. Keep that in mind. So because I don't have the CW Mars assessment, I plugged in a number that assumes a total assessment of $35,665. This is half of that. This assumption is based on two things. One, I assumed a 3% increase in our annual membership. There's some pages in your packet that I won't get too deeply into tonight, but if you want to take a look at them, it breaks down how CW Mars is funded. Federally, state grants, and then membership assessments, which is what we pay. I think it's really helpful in understanding because as some of those things decrease, the membership assessment has to increase. And because some of those things are going away or are in doubt, generally our assessment is 1 to 2% every year. I assumed it's 3% increase because I think it's reasonable to assume that our membership might go up a little bit. But I'll find out what their finance committee meets and figures out what exactly is going on. Those lines, the second assumption is based on our network line, which is so all of our internet, the staff internet, the public internet, our Wi-Fi. Currently, that network line, which is baked into its assessment, is $302 a year. 80% of the total cost is paid for through state grant. That is the MBLC telecommunications grant. We are told that's likely to end, even though it's state funded. It's because the MBLC is downsizing because they're funded a lot through the Institute for Museum and Library Services, which doesn't work. So as they reduce staff, they have to reprioritize what those staff are going to focus on. So that grant may not be, they may not have somebody. So I had to budget for the full amount until I'm sure whether that amount, whether that grant will continue into fiscal 27 or not. I am planning on filing for something called E-rate funding, which is again in your packet of information if you want to read more about it. That would bring the cost back down. It's a lengthy application process. I can't even get to an information session until the fall, and I don't even think the application process starts until January, February. So it's not going to happen in time for me to budget for it for fiscal year 27, probably fiscal year 28. And CW Mars has staff that help basic. So I think it'll be a net good, but it's going to have to skip a year. And that is much more stable funding. And the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of E-rate funding recently. So we're a little less worried about that one. So they're trying to get everybody to switch from that telecommunications grant. to the grant. That's what we'll do, it's just gonna take a little. longer. Books and periodicals and non-print media, if you look at those together, they have to be 15% of our total budget. So that number fluctuates as the budget goes up and down. That is all of our materials. We take that number together, so it doesn't really describe fully what we use it for, non-print media and books and periodicals. It's just that the line item in the accounting book hasn't really changed in a long time. But like our books and periodicals line covers a lot of our ebook funding databases. You just look at that together collectively, those two numbers make up our collections budget. Easier to think of it that way. That has to be 15% to meet the requirements for certain. If that's not 15%, I think there's a mid-level compliance and a low-level compliance and then a waiver. If you're just not in compliance. You really have to be careful. Don't know what the waiver process is. I've not been through it. I hear it's unpleasant. If you lose state certification, your residents of your town cannot borrow books from other libraries. So that money that pays the other half of our network membership, that goes away. We don't want to. I don't want to get on that road. And it's important to note that while this stays 15% every year, it's at 15%. That doesn't mean that my buying power stays the same from year to year. Particularly when it comes to electronic stuff. Ebooks and e-audio in particular are fair pricing, and they kind of can do whatever they want. Right. So every year the price seems to go up. The licenses seem to be less advantageous to library users. We can purchase less. So it's very complicated. I won't get into it tonight, but it's just an important note that 15% is not equal.
So even though this may be 15%, you could make a reasonable argument that that's not a level service. Because,
Right.
because we would get less in 27 with this budget than we did in 26. That's
Yes.
a point worth making.
For example, Overdrive, pulled out of for a minute. And then re-signed a contract to go back in. Was okay, we were never like in non-compliance with state law or anything like that. That's a whole side tangent, but in between leaving the contract and re-entering the contract, they upped their audiobook prices by $20 a license. That's a lot. The ebooks were not like anywhere from like $10 to $40. And then as they re-entered, it's a 1% discount in purchasing. So, right to your state representatives. Feel some kind of way about it. If you look at the last three, it's travel, mileage, dues, and meetings. Those are all professional development related. That's travel for, like, if I have an in-person user council meeting for CW Mars, I can get reimbursed for my mileage. Dues are ALA or Mass Library Association memberships, Public Library Association memberships for my professional staff. Conference attendance goes under meetings if we can't, like sometimes we get scholarships and we can send people for free. Sometimes we have to pay for it. So right now there's a small amount that can offset the cost of it. That covered the level service budget, and that was the longest part, I promise. But it was also the happiest. So get smashed up to be better. Do you have any additional questions on this part?
And so before I want to comment, Jerry, to make sure that you point out and refresh their memories on the death of IMLS. That's Thank you.
I'll put it as my cover sheet.
Yeah.
It might be worth, in introductions, here are some things that have recently changed in the world of libraries that will impact our.
Part of this meeting is also so that I can put the link to this meeting on my handout, so that people who truly want to know more in depth, because 5 minutes is just really tough.
Yeah.
No matter how New England I speak, how fast I can speak. 5 minutes is a lot, to go through 2 budgets. So, I mean, I have to condense it down a lot, so all the information I just gave you has to go super, super high level, because there's 21 or 22 other people that are going, and we all have 5 minutes. There's no questions. It's a lot, so no questions. Okay, so a level funded request, which means we have the exact same amount of money as we have in fiscal year 26, which means that cost increases that we cannot do anything about have to be offset by cost cuts elsewhere. That means that services and programs. That draft reduction, I'm so sorry. I went back, I did more math. The number that I gave you in your packet was a little off. It's $54,210. There are options for cuts in this hypothetical, and it's important to remember throughout this that this is an exercise for the financial summit, not a reality. Some of these are assumptions, things that cannot be reduced or cut. So the instructions that we were all given as department heads was to look at service cuts, not staff cuts. So if you have services that can be cut, that's what they want to hear. So it's like there are some town departments that their budget is just staff. So they have no choice but to say this would be staff because that's all they have. We have services, so you will not see a staff cut mentioned in any of this. You will only see service cuts.
I think that's the right approach anyway, even if you have been
Yeah.
given that direction.
I was not about to stand up and be like, I
And
would
it's not,
cut.
yeah, and it's not just rah, we like our people.
No,
It's the vast majority of people that walk in that door need contact with a staff person for the purpose that they are here for. And a lot of people come through that door, and I'll bet that might be a good number to throw in there somewhere. That's a lot of people. We know how high of, the events that take place in this building, how many people come into that. But the count that door puts through is big.
103,272 people came in to the library in 2025.
Yeah.
20,708 people attended the program.
So other than schools, it's probably the busiest town building that we have.
Correct. Senior center gets a lot of people too.
Yeah.
We definitely have to.
Yeah.
So my assumptions are, we were told you cannot cut the hourly rate of staff member, right? You can't do that. You can't cut salaries. You can't skip a raise. Like I can't just say, don't give me my 4%, save money. Even if I wanted to, that's not acceptable. I can't forego longevity for anybody. I can't do anything about the utilities. I can't just turn the lights off and make it cheaper. My assumption here, which I think is a pretty good one, but tell me if you disagree, is that we need the CWMR's contract, because otherwise we don't have a way of managing what's checked out, what's available, what's, patrons, patron records, any data, like all of our data is in our software. So my assumption is that cannot be reduced or cut. So that's left alone. Therefore, and the staff internet line, we need to have staff internet to connect to the ILS. Therefore, staff internet. The elevator telephone is an emergency telephone line. I can't cut it. Custodial supplies. We need toilet paper. And at least one multifunction printer, scanner, and copy machine for staff. It seems unrealistic for this building not to have at least one. That is an assumption. It's to try not printing after you see some of this.
Just printed the town hall with, you know.
Right.
someone can run over.
Okay. This is now everything that I'm cutting. So if you look at that red middle budget, this is everything that I'm cutting to get to 54,210. Everything in the equipment maintenance line. Okay, we're zeroing that out, which means we cannot offer public computers anymore. Because we would not be able to put them on the network. We wouldn't have the security software to do it. We wouldn't have the ability to let patrons print, scan, or copy. Because we wouldn't have the software to let them connect it. Which would be fine because we wouldn't have the computers anyway. So they don't need to print. That just gets zeroed out. Contractual services, it's everything that isn't the CW Mars line, I believe. Yep, here I am. So that's our self-checkout, that's our summer reading. It's not the program, it's just the very small amount that we pay for the software for them to manage the signups and track the kids' progress through the summer. It's our whole website. Right, we would not have web hosting, so we'd have to go onto the town website and just make do with the limitations that Civic Engage does. We can do it, right? I've seen libraries that have that website. Not as robust, it's not as, doesn't do quite the same thing, but, you know, to get rid of it. The Wowberry, the weekly newsletter, that would be gone. The little ticker at the bottom would be gone with the new books. Our meeting room bookings software would be gone. The museum passes, the reservation system would be gone. Library of Things reservation would be gone. The event registration and calendar would be gone. So that would all be covered. All of that. So we'd be doing things on paper. And we wouldn't have a way of putting up. So we've covered it. Maybe there's a way that we could put a calendar on the Civic Engage website to be continued. But you know, all of that is gone. For office supplies, we're cutting our postage, so we're not sending out bills. We're not doing interlibrary loan anymore. By the way, for self-checkout, the impact of that is 33,788 checkouts last year. Or handled by self-checkout.
Yeah, an interlibrary loan, that means outside of the CW Mars system.
Outside of Massachusetts. Yeah, inside of Massachusetts, but outside the network does
Yep.
not have postage because we have to deliver.
And what percentage of the self-checkout is it across all checkouts? You know, that number?
Roughly 30%. So we would not be mailing bills for lost items. We would just have to rely on that go out. Doesn't come back. Emails, it doesn't come back with the emails. And 3 of the 4 printer copier machines, including the public machine. Just have one for staff. Would probably be the one that's connected to. And first, because the things that most critically need to print things. I don't think the administrative assistant can do a job of that. Does all the bills and things like that. So staff would still be able to access the copier. We would probably only do black and white because it's less expensive than color. Yep, so After everything else that I cut, I still had to cut from the materials budget. So I just took it from one line item together because again, you take them together. I had to cut $22,929, which brings us down to 13.7% of the total budget, which puts us at low level compliance. So if anything else goes up, any of those assumptions that I have made, if the utilities goes up, if the CW Mars assessment is higher, if you decide you want to keep anything else, that number goes down. Supplies, most of the library supplies. We won't have locking security cases anymore. We'll just get rid of them. We'll circulate it in packaging that it comes in. Because we won't have the money for it. We won't have batteries for playaways. We won't have glue strips to re-glue books when they're falling apart. We just have to get rid of them when they can't circulate anymore. The cases for bags, kits, hotspots, you know, when the current ones are broken and we don't have replacements for them, we just rubber band the stuff together or use a plastic bag or find something, but we won't have money to replace them. 0 replacement computers. We won't have any money for it. 0 travel dues and meetings. That was probably the easiest line to zero out, to be honest with you. Not that it's easy to say that nobody needs professional development, but it hurt as much as cutting locking security cases and book budget. So that's how I got to 54,210. If you want to consider something else, every line item that you restore equates to a further reduction in the materials budget for this exercise, because I can't cut the other things unless you want to go back and say we would eliminate our network membership and just have no ILS. Again, it seems like a critical expense. Otherwise, we have no patron management. We can't find things.
Not saying that, okay, that's, I'm not saying.
It's a hypothetical exercise.
Everything's hypothetical.
Yeah,
In terms of things like utilities and like how would a reduction of hours offset a reduction of service?
a reduction of hours in and of itself wouldn't do a whole lot without cutting staff. It would be a hard.
Oh, I know,
And the reason is because the building,
Utilities.
the reason is because the building would still need to be heated. Lights would still need to be on if staff are here. So whether we're open or not. I mean, there might be some utility savings from not having a printer or any computers on, but you want to cut hours, having enough for this exercise specifically.
And then, you know, it's also. What's so long and so hard, to get our hours back. And, I hate to even entertain that thought in my head, but also, particularly in the summer, the library is one of the cooling centers
Yes,
for the town.
yes,
So it'd be important to have the library open as often, as long as possible.
yes.
Just, you know, for that reason alone.
We are the town's cooling center. The backup, if we are not, like if our HVAC goes, the backup is the senior center. But they do not have the hours that we do. So in the summer and like conversely in the winter, it's sort of like a warming area, although less critical in the cooling. Most people, if they have heat, they may not have air conditioning, but most people generally have some kind of heat, but we do have people who come in to warm up. So.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that. We may not have a choice in it. However, I think in the current climate that we're dealing with budget wise, locally and the little girl. Your big.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if, you know, we had to
I think we would walk down that road if this hypothetical became more than that.
Right. Well, I think not just that, I mean, not just Northborough, I'm just thinking of, statewide. There's gonna be an awful lot of libraries that are gonna have trouble.
I think they did that during the pandemic. I
They
think,
did,
yeah.
they did it during the pandemic, they did it in the 2008 session. So there's a history of, if everybody's in it together, they're generally, but you still have to go through the waiver process and you still have to do all that work.
Yeah.
So
Is our sorry, can you go back to the slide with the library services, not library, the books and periodical, yeah. So the savings is 22, but we would risk losing certification and state aid.
we'd be at minimum compliance, which means that our state aid is reduced, but
Okay.
we would stay certified, I believe. I'm not sure exactly what minimum level compliance is, what it entails, because I've never really been there.
What is our amount of state aid that we're receiving?
That fluctuates every year. Here it was just shy of $40,000, so half went straight to CW Mars, the other half goes towards my emergency breakage fund.
Yeah. So if we lose that, this isn't really a savings, because we have to make up for that elsewhere, or that would be cut, just.
Say that again.
So, well, if we're saving $22,000, but risking losing this
40.
amount, 40, it's not really a savings because we have to find that elsewhere, or is that something else that would just be on the shopping block?
I think you said that the aid would be reduced, not
Aid would be
eliminated.
reduced.
My question would be, how much would it get?
That's
reduced?
right.
It's hard to-
I would imagine that there were, like, if I had to guess, it'd be difficult for me to guess how much it would be reduced by, but if we need $18,000 and we're currently getting 40, that it would be my emergency things or breaking fund that would go away as opposed to the network. Like, we would just focus on the network members. Occasionally our state aid also, we're able to send somebody to or like that would go away.
So the state aid doesn't cover like other things in here. It's the CW Mars and emergency. Okay, yeah, that's okay. Thank you. That's what I was curious about.
Yep, and every once in a while, we have there's something that we really would love to have. Yeah. Opportunistic in the budget, and we don't want to put a warrant on it. We have state aid, we can use it, but it's not a high balance. It would not offset this. I could not cut all of this and use state aid.
But the 13.7% figure is still low, like to library loans and patron fees. For the library,
From Massachusetts.
for Massachusetts.
The problem that we have is that we don't know what the number will be from MBLC because they haven't told us, because they're still working through the impact of losing IMLS at federal level. So,
And it's also like if the state budget for 27 gets cut, state aid gets cut, right? So the number that we receive for state aid depends on the total line item that they fund, right, every year. So if that gets cut, then our state aid gets cut. It's not a number I can guarantee it's going to be the same every year. It's been a lot lower before.
It probably would be helpful to mention that in your notes, that,
It's not a guaranteed amount.
well,
And it's not,
Covering core functions.
right,
Yeah, that's okay.
it cannot.
it cannot,
Yeah, we've been lucky that we've been able to cover 50% of this network membership for so long. State aid went away. We would have to request the full amount and
Is Amanda stressing?
I love what's in front of him. Behind him is bananas and tomatoes and.
You don't eat your bananas when you're stressing.
Electricity. Come on, he is not saying she loves us.
I mean, clearly his mom never said, are we pulling the whole neighborhood?
Yeah.
Whole library. This is our new, this is our really be a cooling center, is this guy. So
This guy is
Yeah.
cooling the whole house with this fridge. So again, this is early in the year long financial. This is sort of like their first real conversation. Not the last conversation. I will refine my estimates. I will get my better numbers. I will look for cost savings everywhere that I can find them without being like ridiculous, right? If I can find similar to the way that we switched our IT, contract. If I can find similar savings, I will find the savings. We will have more conversation as I know more. The town will have more conversation. The appropriations, finance committee, the select board, everybody's gonna have all of their conversations. I will tune into all of them. I do anyway. I like to know everything as soon as it's said. So that I can prepare. We will get more information. We'll know as more information comes to the town. So a lot of their numbers don't come in, like the insurance escalation costs and the projected revenues and all of these other things that go into a town budget. As those come in, they'll know what they're looking at. And then they'll know them looking at for our budgets. So for right now, this is an exercise. Having this conversation early, look at it as a good thing, because we're gonna have this conversation sooner or later. Let's have it sooner, rip the Band-Aid off. Jen doesn't have to stress about it after the 26th for now, because we would have presented, this is what's going on. It's not set in stone. This is not necessarily what would. And then we'll. If we need to stress the later, we'll stress the and advocate later, right? And then town meeting is in April. We'll do what we.
Let's discuss.
Then do you have, any understanding, idea of what the revenues of the town are gonna be? Property values are going up all the time, right? Taxes should be going up.
Well, they are.
I don't know about you. Vague understanding of how they project revenue based on listening to presentations about it. I have no idea how to predict it.
I can answer that to some extent. The revenues go up every year, and they are definitely gonna go up next year. Expenses also go up. And expenses go up faster than revenues.
So
Yeah,
this is
that's-
figuring in.
This is the problem that the town has kind of hit, that the revenues have not been growing to the extent that the expenses have been. My opinion, primarily due to the lack of commercial revenue, which was for many years astounding as far as the growth. Like the warehouses, but they pay millions of dollars a year in property taxes. And those things have slowed down. We did just approve a fire station, but that's not part of the calculation, because that's what's called included debt. Don't overweight that, but that's it. Push that away. And it's health insurance goes up. Health insurance wasn't too bad for a while. This past year was unexpectedly awful and really caused us a problem before town meeting, and we were able to fine tune it not to get through it. I don't know what that's going to look like next year, but the signs that people talked about a couple months ago were like, it might not be a pretty year again. That could cause problems, but that makes a big difference. If health insurance ends up being a 3% year instead of a 20% year, many of these problems go away. If it is a 20 or 30% year, then the problems get a lot worse.
If we're looking at an override. Budget, it depends, right? A lot of this is to show that there's not a lot of fluff or excess in the budget. There's not a lot of areas to cut. Everybody walks away with a better understanding of budget first, so that if cuts have to be made, maybe they're not like so drastic. But yeah, there's potentially a lot of bigger conversations that the town has to have. What is not happening is the library is not being targeted for that, right? So it's not like they're gonna take our money and give it to another town. That has not been conversation. It's just sort of like an across the board, like everybody's gonna have to take a hit if that. So. Not that that creates a rainbow, but it's nice because I have seen some situations where certain departments are exempted from cuts and others take a bigger hit. So that's.
Big, bigger than the guy or. That
Yeah, it's probably a lot of
$2
money.
million more than they expected.
That's good.
So, I mean, now, of course, at the state level, how many different ways of the budget being pulled,
Right.
but it's not like that.
Right.
So that's something.
Stable funding in the library related line items would be. Here.
They were
We were level funded. I think there was a small increase even. But it was still like. It was a very good outcome for us at the state level.
I'll ask a question that someone will ask with that hat on, if you will. Why, we have this great group of library friends, they do bake sales, book sales. Why can't they just come up with $54,000?
Thank you. I meant to mention that in all of this budget conversation, one thing that you will notice is that I have attention programs for all. The Friends cover all of the programming, and that's where all of their.
Then coming up with another 54
Would be difficult.
is unlikely.
Yeah, there's about 12 to 14 active members in the Friends. So. Oh, I'm sorry, they also fund our museum taxes.
Yes.
So that does not come out of our budget. It would be very difficult for them to pull. And our book sale chair is amazing, and our Friends of the Library raise more money than most Friends groups with the way that they efficiently run their online book sales, in-person book sales. They're looking at other ways to raise revenue, but there's no way they would be able to raise $54,000 a year in addition to what they're already doing with state office.
And that's the every year part, like it has to be sustainable. Like it's not like just a one-time payout.
Additionally,
Yes, it's recurring costs.
I would also say, their mission statement and their charter as a nonprofit is not, I think it's specific, it's very specific to programs and select services. They exempt operational ongoing costs. So there's a lot of things that we would have to cut that would not be consistent. They would.
Money left from their building budget. I know most of that's spent.
With that.
Yeah.
Your statement.
Yeah.
It does. It does. It goes into, a trust, yeah, which is not, they can't draw on that right now.
That's the new thing. Consistent. The direction that you want, that like you have consistently shown there is not one line item that came up that was inconsistent with your theory, with your mission as you took on this project. So well done. It isn't pretty to look at, but it was, everything you did was.
Then you're almost ready to go to the summit. Would it be helpful to preview your presentation before us again? Just that 5 minute?
I would. It at all, like the more I can throw it at people, the better. I have to have whatever materials I'm gonna submit. Review for the Tuesday. I'm a little ahead of the game in terms of having the numbers ready. It's just sort of, what did this take, an hour? I had to pare it down. 5 minutes.
Making the presentation before us
Right.
might be pounding for you a little bit because it'll be a nerve-wracking experience for you. I assume.
Possibly. This is nerve-wracking. I gave this presentation to 6 staff members earlier, nerve-wracking. Yeah, it's gonna be, I'm generally pretty good at, comfortable at presenting, but it's just sort of the subject matter that's like,
That's the good news. They also got to having the same problem, to get there. Yeah. By the PW.
You want to show up in his own.
yes. Can you use a presentation? Be in the back of the room.
I would be delighted, but not as equipped.
Or a friend who doesn't drive.
Yes.
Yes, I could come in the dinosaur outfit. Like,
The Grinch feels good.
the Grinch.
Yeah.
I won't have slides. I have very minimal handouts and I have 5 minutes. So. Okay, when I enjoy it as an intellectual challenge. Because the glass has to be half full.
I will give my reaction is I was anticipating and somewhat hoping that a level funded budget wouldn't eat into either salary, either people or books and periodicals. The fact that you had to eat into books and periodicals, which is a better place to go than staff. That hurts. I mean, it stinks. It really, really stinks. And that tells me how that's not a good budget. It's the best.
Right.
I don't disagree with a single number.
Right.
I think you've got the right approach. I support it. I hope we don't have to go there because that is, and it goes back to with books and periodicals, a level service budget really isn't a level service for that.
Right.
It really isn't.
Right.
That's the core function
Right.
of the library.
To many people, it is viewed as a core function, as the core function. I don't see it as the core function. I see it as a really, really important core function. Because plenty of people come in here for things that are not just borrowing a book. I think that's an old-fashioned thinking that a lot of people still have. It's still, we're not a library if we don't do that.
Right.
But that's why I hate to say it, but I'd rather cut a little bit on books and periodicals than staff.
But then there's also the downstream impact of doing that, which
Yeah.
then eats into the other services that, like that, if nothing else, Jen, you've illustrated just how lean the library has been running. And the things that are now getting cut are things that people will notice. People come in here to use the computers, to search for jobs, do whatever, to print things out, things that are services that are not available anywhere else are now potentially not going to be available here. And by cutting, depending again on what everyone else comes to the table with, cutting that books and periodicals below that minimum 15% also puts in danger that other piece that are the core functions of the library.
I think getting that number, was it 103,000?
33,272.
There you go. I think getting that number up in people's face as often as possible
Mhm.
is really important.
Just under 17,000 computer sessions. So I would say, I almost said people, but some people use the computer more than once during the year, but so there were annual computer sessions, 16,900. That's probably. There were over 3,000 Wi-Fi sessions based on the best estimate that we had.
How much printer usage? I know it's probably, do you even, you probably
It's,
have it.
it's hard to
Got
get
it.
that number.
But again, thinking what one's going away. I
Yeah.
have to count it.
And the other number that I'll throw out there about state certification and what if we've applied for a waiver and the worst case scenario happened and we didn't get it. And people couldn't use other Massachusetts libraries collections to check out. We are a net borrower library, which means that our residents borrow more materials from other libraries than we as a library lend to other municipalities. So we sent out 11,578 items last year. We received 18,956 for our residents. So that's a difference of 7,370.
Also, Jen, so like I live over in Agawam, so a lot of times I'm in a book club and either you guys have the book or Shrewsbury has the book. So if you're not in the CW Mars network, can I not go to Shrewsbury and pick up the book?
If we're not state certified, you cannot go to Shrewsbury and pick up a book. You can't go to Marlboro, Southborough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our shared school systems.
Yeah.
It's tricky. That book budget. I talked about how the databases are in that budget. Just took over, all of the databases that were cut by the MBLC. That is for the schools, for the kids to use, for their homework and their research assignments. That is probably something.
Discussion of the school department.
We're sharing funding.
Oh,
It's Northborough, Southborough, and the schools have shared funding to offset that cost. It's a wonderful partnership. We're so excited about it. With 23,000 out of our budget, I don't know what we'll be able to keep. I don't know. Maybe we prioritize that and we cut other things, right? But
I mean, I can't imagine the public library without it. I can imagine even less with the school libraries without it.
it's so heavily used.
That's just, that's wonderful to hear.
So did not want to cut the materials budget or left it alone until the very end. I looked at maybe we could lock some bathrooms and save some money. We could save like 50 bucks on toilet paper if we all have 6 bathrooms. I don't know.
Like that's the leaves outside.
You bring your own roll.
Chocolate rock with the charger.
Instead of paying fines for opening books, I know we don't charge those, but maybe we institute a roll of paper.
You have an overdue book, you always. Toilet paper, post-it notes, or
You can pay for your lost library book as well. You just have to use the library.
Yeah.
It's like you do the broken ones that we can't repair anymore. Put them in there and like, well, this is the pack rating thing. I was being Sandra and talked about things over and over,
Thank you, Caitlin, for entertaining my 11 o'clock at night text going, how much would we save by locking 6 bathrooms? Or going, go to bed. Why are you awake?
Another realization to this process, which is that many of the things that might be cut by this level funding budget will negatively impact staff anyway. They will mean more people have to call the library to reserve that they want to come to the story hour, or they want to be part of this, that's the other thing. Checkouts, 30, that 30% of people that use the e-scan will now have to go to the desk.
Yeah.
So that puts burden on staff and makes it even harder to justify taking people away.
We would have to look at whether we could even function. Or whether we would have to drop the museum pass lending program, because that functions because we have the booking software, because they're all, every single one of them has a different lending policy. And it only works because we have this computer system that manages that for us. If we had to do it manually.
Also a good chunk of passes that are e-passes.
Right,
So there's also that as well, where
somebody would have to manually send a code every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we would have time when we're emailing everybody about their overdues and all these other, all the other things we have to go back and manually do it.
There might be other cuts in services that might need to take place to keep some of those things, even just the 30% increase in circulation staff.
Right,
Might cause something else to get dropped.
right. It would be very difficult, even though our summer reading software is a very small cost. Without it, it's almost not manageable to do a summer reading. I mean, we had some programs over the summer, the children's, that had like easily 200-300 people. They had some that were in this room that were very carefully managed by registration software. I'm not sure what they would be able to do if they had to keep, like, but they did a ninja course here. And it was in banks of time. If they had to carefully manage like which kids are signed up for which time, they might have on that program because of the time. They might opt for a lower. Which it's just unfortunate, you know, our story times, we have some story times that require registration because the room fills up. Can't go over a certain capacity otherwise. So time it takes to manage 100% registration is a lot, plus the privacy concerns that I have about names and contact information being written on paper and being thrown around. That's just. And it's a hypothetical draft. It's a draft. So if there's nothing else. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Continue to. Email Jim.
Yeah. And yes. Can someone make a motion to adjourn the meeting? We have to do this officially. Thank you. And that was the motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:15 p.m.
Hard work, Jen.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Start to do with the muscles.
Yeah. Created.
Hey, you know what?
So.
Happens.
Jen, hypothetical.
Bless you.